Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News Analyst Lt General Reginald Centracchio. Governor Raimondo on Wednesday announced Navy Lieutenant Commander Yassim Yarn as the first director of the Veterans Affairs in Rhode Island. The General Assembly, General, as you know, created this cabinet-level position back in 2011, but it's been vacant. She said, and I quote, "We owe our veterans a debt of gratitude for the sacrifices they and their families have made on our behalf." You'll never get an argument to that quote. The question is, what is the big mission for this job?
The biggest mission, as I see it, is education. Clearly, within the organization, being the Department of Veterans Affairs, to ensure that they understand what their mission is, and then further to educate the newly created veterans, the existing veterans from each of the wars, and to make sure there's an understanding as to what's available and how to access that and take away the bureaucracy that apparently is in place and has been in place for some time now, as to veterans not being able to get those services and benefits due them.
General, there's a real challenge here. Now we're talking about Korean War veterans, Vietnam veterans, and of course the soldiers that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan too. So what's the challenge to try to take care of? That's a diverse group.
It is, and you're right on. That's a good point. The point is that each of those veterans and those groups have their own distinct set of criteria as to what is important to them, and how they go about identifying themselves as to whether in fact they're legitimately available for those benefits that they should be getting. So let's talk about that just for a second. Vietnam veterans are very reluctant to ask anybody for anything. In fact, there's still a bad taste out there, and hopefully we'll never see that ever again. The Korean veterans still have somewhat of a bad taste because they've never been recognized as a legitimate war, yet we lost over 55,000 American soldiers there. When you get to Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait and all the other incendiary scenarios we've had, you get a different attitude. Only recently are the new veterans accepting the fact that there are legitimate benefits that they should be gaining access to, and only recently have they been able to go to either a state agency or a federal agency and get access to it and be able to be delivered to them.
You know, PTSD was never really recognized until, what, after the Vietnam War. We hear a lot about it today, especially for soldiers coming back in Iraq and Afghanistan. What services are there in place already for them?
You know, and once again, a good point. You go back to World War II, and you were looked upon as a coward for having that kind of a psychological problem. Then you get into a career, and it was looked at as a shell shock, and recognizing it had some psychological impact, but nothing that could be treated. Then you get into the more recent wars, such as Vietnam, and then they started to recognize there is a legitimate reason for having this kind of psychological problem, and therefore it became known as PTSD, which is a treatable scenario, providing the individual soldier recognizes that he or she has that and it's able to be treated.
And drugs and alcohol can marry into that too.
Absolutely. When you look at PTSD, Mike, you look at what causes it, ranging from either a traumatic scenario, being in war and having your life go before you, or you look at alcohol, drugs, financial problems, all of which can be placed into the same cauldron, so to speak, and you come up with something called PTSD. It's a psychological inability to deal with day-to-day challenges, either be it alcohol, drugs, or some other scenario.
Okay, and the director is not going to take over for a couple of months. The announcement was made today. Before we run out of time, General, let's talk about China for a second. They acquire an island. We're talking about missiles on an island. I think this kind of went under the radar and people not understanding what's going on here.
Right. Those islands are presently claimed by Taiwan, Japan, and China. The same set of islands are all claimed to be owned by those three countries. China went ahead, even though they said the missiles have been there for some time. I don't agree with that. Recently, they put missiles on those islands as part of some reason that they should be building up a military presence in the South China Sea. And so consequently, it is causing a problem. There'll always be a problem between China and Taiwan. Taiwan is really concerned that one day there'll be a confrontation as to who owns Taiwan.
All right, General, as always, thank you for your thoughts, and thank you very much for watching.